Picture this. It's the year 48 BC. Julius Caesar's fleet has just set the harbor of Alexandria ablaze. Flames leap from ship to ship, black smoke chokes the Egyptian sky. In our timeline, those flames spread to the docks, to the warehouses, and finally consumed the greatest repository of human knowledge ever assembled. But what if they didn't? What if one change in wind direction, one heroic intervention, one cosmic quirk of fate preserved the Library of Alexandria intact? You're about to discover how a single building's survival could have rewritten everything you know about human progress. Because when knowledge survives, civilizations don't just continue, they explode. And the world you'd wake up in today would be unrecognizable. This isn't just alternate history. This is the story of humanity's greatest missed opportunity, and what we lost when the scrolls turned to ash. To understand what we're saving, you need to see the Library of Alexandria not as it exists in your imagination, some dusty scroll warehouse, but as it truly was, a cathedral of human curiosity, the Google of the ancient world. Construction began around 283 BC under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, and his ambition was terrifying in its scope. Acquire every text from every civilization, in every language ever written. Imagine you're a ship captain docking at Alexandria. Before you can unload your trade goods, Ptolemaic agents board your vessel. They search not for contraband, but for books. Any scroll, any manuscript, any written document is immediately confiscated, taken to the library where teams of scribes create perfect copies. You get the copy back. The library keeps the original. This wasn't just collecting. This was systematic intellectual imperialism. Within decades, the library housed somewhere between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls. Scholars still argue about the true number, but even the low estimate represents the accumulated wisdom of the entire known world. Mathematics from Babylon, medicine from Egypt, philosophy from Athens, astronomy from Persia, poetry from every corner of the Mediterranean, all under one roof, all accessible to any scholar who could reach Alexandria's shores. But the library was never just books. It was people. Brilliant, obsessive, revolutionary people. Eratosthenes of Cyrene stood in the library's courtyard and calculated the Earth's circumference using nothing but shadows, geometry, and pure reasoning, and he got it right to within 400 kilometers. Think about that. 2,000 years before satellites, before computers, before even telescopes. He knew the size of our world. Hero of Alexandria, working in the library's workshops, invented the eolipill, the world's first steam engine, in 50 AD. Imagine if that knowledge hadn't been lost. Aristarchus proposed heliocentrism, that Earth orbits the sun, 17 centuries before Copernicus. 17 centuries? The scientific revolution could have started before the birth of Christ. Callimachus created the Pinax, a 120-volume catalog of the library's holdings, the world's first library science system, organizing human knowledge by subject and author. Modern libraries still use his principles. And then there was Hypatia, the last great scholar of Alexandria, teaching mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy in the 4th century AD, until a mob of religious zealots murdered her in the streets. In our timeline, her death symbolized the end of the ancient intellectual world. But what if the library had survived? What if Hypatia had mentored 1,000 more students? What if those students had students? An unbroken chain of knowledge transmission across the centuries. Now, the moment everything changes, our divergence point, it's still 48 BC. Caesar's war with Ptolemy XIII has brought chaos to Alexandria. In our timeline, the fire spreads from the harbor. The museum quarter where the library stands is engulfed. Estimates suggest anywhere from 40,000 to the entire collection was destroyed. Scholars have debated for centuries, but in this timeline, the wind shifts. The fire burns itself out at the docks. A frantic bucket brigade of scholars and citizens forms a human chain from the sea. Water, desperation, determination. By dawn, the harbor is a smoldering ruin, but the library stands, every scroll intact, every text preserved. Caesar himself, surveying the damage, realizes what nearly happened. This conqueror, this military genius, this man who burned his way across Gaul. He looks at those marble walls and understands he almost destroyed something more valuable than any kingdom. He posts guards. He allocates funds for fire protection. The precedent is set. The library is untouchable, sacred, beyond politics, beyond war. And in this single decision, the trajectory of human civilization bends. What happens next will take your breath away. With the library preserved, Alexandria doesn't decline, it accelerates. The year 100 AD, scholars have now had over 4 centuries of uninterrupted access to the complete ancient knowledge base. They're not just preserving information, they're building on it. Hero's steam engine isn't a curiosity, it's being developed. By 200 AD, primitive steam-powered water pumps are irrigating the Nile Delta. Crop yields double. Famine becomes rare, population explodes. The economic surplus funds more research, more scholars, more innovation, a virtuous cycle. Mathematical knowledge from India, brought by traders, merges with Greek geometry and Babylonian algebra. By 300 AD, proto-calculus is being developed, 1,000 years early. Astronomical observations, recorded continuously for centuries, reveal the precession of the equinoxes, the movements of planets with stunning accuracy. Scholars begin to suspect the true scale of the cosmos. Medicine, this is where it gets profound. Continuous anatomical study, building on Egyptian embalming knowledge and Greek systematization, leads to early understanding of blood circulation by 250 AD. Surgical techniques advance. Infection rates drop. Life expectancy creeps upward. And here's the cascade. Healthier scholars live longer, produce more work, teach more students. The intellectual compound interest is staggering. But let's not romanticize this. History isn't a straight line upward. The Roman Empire still falls. Barbarian invasions still sweep across Europe. Plague still devastates populations. Religious conflicts still erupt. The difference? The library survives it all. When Rome collapses in the West in 476 AD, Alexandria, now part of the Eastern Roman Empire, becomes even more vital. Refugees from across the crumbling empire flee to Egypt. They bring manuscripts, knowledge, desperate expertise. The library absorbs it all. The collection swells to over 600,000 scrolls. When the Islamic conquest comes in 641 AD, here's where our timeline diverges dramatically. In recorded history, the sources are murky. Did Caliph Umar order the library's destruction, or is that Christian propaganda? We'll never know for certain. But in our alternate timeline, the Muslim conquerors, themselves inheritors of a scholarly tradition that reveres knowledge, recognize the library's value immediately. They don't destroy it, they enhance it. Arabic scholars join Greek and Roman ones. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, founded in our timeline in 800 AD, becomes a sister institution to Alexandria. Texts flow between them. Greek philosophy gets translated to Arabic, gets translated to Latin. The preservation chain is unbroken. The Dark Ages aren't quite so dark. Jump forward to the year 1000 AD. In our timeline, Europe is mired in feudalism. Ancient knowledge exists only in scattered monastery copies, often corrupted through generations of hand-copying errors. Scientific progress has virtually halted, but in this timeline, European scholars are making pilgrimages to Alexandria like Muslims to Mecca. The library has become the intellectual center of 3 continents. And here's what they find: complete works of Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, no translation errors, no missing books, original texts in original Greek. But more than that, they find the accumulated work of 15 continuous centuries of scholarship building on those foundations. Advanced mathematics, detailed astronomical tables, medical knowledge that won't be rediscovered in our timeline for another 600 years. They bring it back to Oxford, Paris, Bologna. Universities explode in growth. The Renaissance, that rebirth of classical learning, it doesn't wait until the 15th century. It begins in the 11th. Imagine Leonardo da Vinci born into a world that already has his level of engineering knowledge as baseline. Imagine Galileo with access to 17 centuries of continuous astronomical observation. Imagine Newton standing on the shoulders not of medieval giants, but of an unbroken line of scientific inquiry stretching back to Archimedes. The compound interest of preserved knowledge is now producing returns that would seem like magic to our timeline. By 1200 AD, something unprecedented is happening. Hero's steam engine, continuously refined for over a millennium, has evolved into practical power generation. Factories in Alexandria, Cairo, and Constantinople are using steam-powered looms, mills, and manufacturing equipment. Coal mining has industrialized. Metal production has scaled. This is the Industrial Revolution, 5 centuries early. The implications are mind-bending. European powers, racing to catch up with Alexandria's technological supremacy, invest heavily in education, infrastructure, and research. The competition drives innovation faster than war ever could. By 1300 AD, when in our timeline Europe is still medieval, this world has railroads connecting major cities. Telegraph systems using electrical principles derived from ancient Greek studies of static electricity. Early photography based on chemical knowledge preserved from Ptolemaic Egypt. Medicine has advanced to the point where germ theory is established, not through Pasteur in the 1860s, but through continuous observation and experimentation over centuries. Anesthesia exists. Antiseptic surgery exists. Infant mortality is a fraction of what it was. And the population? The global population in this timeline reaches 1 billion not in 1804 as in our history, but around 1400 AD. A billion people in the medieval period. The economic, social, and political ramifications are staggering. But here's where we need to pause, because faster isn't always better. Imagine the environmental impact of industrialization beginning in 1200 instead of 1800. 6 additional centuries of coal burning, deforestation, pollution. Climate change doesn't wait for the 21st century. It's already visible by 1600. Ecological collapse threatens earlier. And what about social development? In our timeline, democracy, human rights, abolition of slavery. These ideas took centuries to develop, often in response to the horrors of unchecked technological power. But in this accelerated timeline, you might have nuclear weapons before you have constitutional democracy. You might have genetic engineering before you have ethical frameworks to govern it. The library preserved knowledge, but did it preserve wisdom? There's another cost too. With one dominant center of learning for over 1,000 years, does intellectual diversity suffer? Do alternative ways of knowing, indigenous knowledge systems, Eastern philosophies that developed independently in our timeline, get absorbed and homogenized into the Alexandrian system? Does the very success of the library create a monoculture of thought that makes humanity more fragile, not less? These aren't easy questions. The survival of the library doesn't create a utopia. It creates a different set of problems, challenges, and moral dilemmas. Perhaps more advanced ones, but problems nonetheless. Push forward again, it's 1700 AD. In our timeline, Newton has just published the Principia Mathematica. The scientific revolution is underway, but in this timeline, humanity is already reaching for the stars. Literally. The mathematical and engineering knowledge base, built over nearly 2 millennia of continuous development, has led to practical rocketry, not crude gunpowder weapons, but actual spaceflight vehicles based on principles that won't be discovered in our timeline until the 20th century. The first human orbital flight occurs in 1722 AD, not 1961. A woman from Alexandria, trained in the library's now global network of research institutions, becomes the first human to see Earth from space. She carries with her a scroll, a symbolic gesture, containing Aristarchus's heliocentric model from 250 BC. A reminder that human knowledge, when preserved, can take us anywhere. By 1750, there are permanent research stations on the moon. By 1800, missions to Mars are being planned. The solar system is opening up. But here's what's fascinating. The philosophical impact is just as profound as the technological one. When humanity reaches space 3 centuries early, it fundamentally changes how we see ourselves. The Copernican revolution, the displacement of humanity from the center of the cosmos, happens more gradually, less traumatically. Environmental consciousness develops earlier because people can literally see the Earth's fragility from space. The overview effect, that profound shift in awareness astronauts report, affects human culture centuries before climate crisis forces us to think globally. Perhaps most significantly, the discovery of the universe's true scale, the realization of how much we don't know, instills a humility that balances the arrogance of technological achievement. The library's greatest lesson, that knowledge is infinite and we are always students, becomes embedded in the civilization's DNA. Now, come back to our timeline, to the reality where the library did burn, where those scrolls became ash, where that chain of knowledge shattered. What did we actually lose? We'll never know the full extent, but scholars can guess. Complete works of Sophocles, we have 7 of his plays. He wrote 123. The rest, probably in Alexandria. Entire books of Livy's History of Rome, lost. Alternative versions of the Bible and other religious texts that might have given us a completely different understanding of early Christianity, lost. Advanced Roman engineering manuals, lost. Medical texts from Egypt's 3,000-year medical tradition, lost. Mathematical treatises from Babylon, lost. Some estimates suggest we retained perhaps 10% of classical literature. 10%. Imagine if 90% of everything written before 1500 AD just vanished tomorrow. That's what happened. But it's not just texts, it's the momentum. Every time the chain breaks, humanity has to start over. We rediscover calculus. We rediscover heliocentrism. We rediscover atomic theory, which, yes, existed in ancient Greece in primitive form. How many times have we relearned the same lessons because the knowledge was lost? How many geniuses wasted their lives rediscovering what Alexandria already knew? The burning of the library didn't just destroy the past. It stole futures. Millions of potential futures where human progress wasn't reset to 0 every few centuries. Here's the part that should terrify you. We're still making the same mistakes. In 2003, the Baghdad Museum was looted during the Iraq War. Thousands of priceless artifacts, irreplaceable records of human civilization, were stolen or destroyed. In Syria, ISIS demolished ancient libraries and archaeological sites. In Brazil, the National Museum burned in 2018, taking 20 million artifacts with it. And it's not just physical destruction. Digital knowledge is more fragile than papyrus. How much of the early internet is already gone? Websites deleted, startups folded, data lost. We assume the cloud is forever, but companies fail. Formats become obsolete. In 100 years, will scholars be able to read our Twitter archives, our scientific databases, or will it all be as lost as those Alexandrian scrolls? The Library of Alexandria isn't ancient history, it's a warning. We like to think we're beyond book burning, beyond knowledge destruction. But every time a library closes due to budget cuts, every time climate change threatens an archive, every time political pressure suppresses research, we're making the same choice Alexandria faced. Do we preserve knowledge, or do we let it burn? And here's what the alternate timeline teaches us. Every moment we preserve knowledge compounds. Every breakthrough builds on previous ones. The cost of loss isn't just what burns today, it's every discovery that would have built on it tomorrow. Forever. But there's hope, because we're finally learning. In 2002, Egypt opened the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, a modern library on the site of the ancient one. It's not just symbolic, it's functional, a cathedral to knowledge for the 21st century. And across the world, projects are emerging that embody the Alexandrian spirit. The Internet Archive, storing over 500 billion web pages, making sure digital history survives. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, preserving genetic knowledge in Arctic permafrost. Wikipedia, the dream of universal knowledge access that the original library would have recognized instantly. Scientists are even developing five-dimensional data storage in quartz glass that could preserve information for billions of years, longer than papyrus, longer than paper, longer than humanity might exist. And there's a beautiful irony here. The Library of Alexandria wanted to collect all knowledge. But it was centralized, vulnerable. One fire could end it. Today, we're building distributed systems. Knowledge replicated across servers globally, backed up, redundant, resilient. The modern Alexandria isn't a building, it's a network. It's an idea that's finally becoming fireproof, but it requires intention. It requires funding. It requires a civilization that values knowledge preservation as much as knowledge creation. That understands the scrolls we save today might enable discoveries 1,000 years from now. That recognizes we are not just inheritors of knowledge. We are its custodians for every human yet to be born. So here we stand, at our own divergence point. In this moment, right now, we have more knowledge at our fingertips than the Library of Alexandria could have dreamed. Every piece of information humanity has ever recorded, theoretically accessible from the device in your pocket. But we also face threats the ancient world never imagined. Climate catastrophe that could destroy physical archives. Cyber warfare that could erase digital ones. Political movements that deny science and burn books, sometimes literally. Algorithms that prioritize engagement over truth, burying knowledge under an avalanche of misinformation. The question isn't what if the Library of Alexandria never burned. The question is, what are we going to do with our library? Because that's what this is. This interconnected web of human knowledge. This is our Alexandria. And every day, we choose whether to preserve it or let it fragment. Whether to build on it or start over. Whether to pass it forward or let it die. The scholars of Alexandria believed knowledge was sacred, worth dying for. Hypatia proved that with her life. And maybe they were right. Maybe in a universe that tends toward entropy, toward chaos, toward forgetting, the act of preserving knowledge is the most defiant, most hopeful, most fundamentally human thing we can do. So the next time you learn something new, remember, you're standing on shoulders. Thousands of years of shoulders. People who preserved knowledge through fires, floods, wars, and dark ages so it could reach you. And now, it's your turn. What will you preserve? What will you create? What will you pass forward? Because somewhere in some distant future, someone might be asking, what if in the early 21st century we chose to save our knowledge instead of letting it burn? What world could we have built? If we had learned Alexandria's lesson, the answer starts now. With you, make it count.